Welcome to Listening with China Blue. This is a podcast that focuses on how listening not only informs us about what is occurring in the world around us, but also helps us connect with others, build stronger businesses, strengthens our mental health, and become more creative and compassionate individuals. As more and more people practice attentive listening in a community, it becomes a community-building practice that strengthens our mental health as we learn from our neighbors. I will be interviewing people from all walks of life to learn how listening has informed them in their field and helped them to make intelligent decisions. They will be artists, musicians, composers, dancers, business people, psychologists, neuroscientists, and Buddhists, to name a few. About me, I'm an internationally exhibiting sound-based artist. In my work, Discovering Unheard Sounds, I realized that the core component that drove my work was simply listening. That realization put me on the path of speaking about and helping people learn to become better listeners. I began with leading sound walks, which I continue to do in the upstate New York region to help people learn to listen from nature. And now, tune your ears to this podcast to learn about the power of listening. And do pay attention until the end for further information on how to start your own listening practice, share it with others, and to support listening with China Blue. Bjorn Eriksson is a sound artist, improviser, and composer. He makes electronic music, composes, and is a solo performer at the Norrbotten Improvisers Orchestra and the Aleatoriska Ensemblen, among others. He also does telematic performances with the Avatar Music Metaverse and DVN-EAO. He teaches sound art, music, and sound at the Hola folkhögskola. He is a certified deep listening teacher and facilitator and provides workshops on deep listening in the Swedish Composers Association, FST. He is also active in the New Music Association, Nimes in Härnösand. Welcome, Bjorn. I am so excited to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
We know each other from the deep listening world, and it's a world that you have been deeply involved in, not to make too much of a pun on the deep world. So I was interested or excited, or I was all of the above. We had mused in the past over how we met, and it was a nice walk in the park of our past together. And I thought we would start with reflecting on that and you telling me your version of how we met.
Yes, thank you. We met in Troy, and it was 2013, as I remember it. It was the first deep listening conference that Pauline and Dion and Heloise were arranging on MPAC at the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And
right.
it was, what?
That's right.
Yeah, and it was also the first time I was visiting United States of America.
Oh.
First trip ever over the Atlantics for me, coming from Sweden. And I was very excited because I was about to take part of this deep listening conference and had a little presentation there also. Really excited, and I was also signing up for a workshop there, and I was lost in this campus of RPI, and I didn't know where MPAC was, and I was walking on the first day before the program started somewhere near the canteen, I think it was, at RPI, and suddenly there it was a couple that looked very nice, and they looked like they were searching for something also. Anyhow, I asked them, and that was you, China Blue, and Seth Horowitz, you together, and yeah, you were not sure. I think you were not really sure how to walk also, but we walked in one distance, and we find our way there, and I remember it as a very fresh walk. The wind was coming from huh, upstream's Hudson River, I think, and it was a very fresh air and nice talk because we started to get to know each other. You told that you also were in that conference, Seth and you, and so yeah, it's a dear memory of this walk to the
Mm-hmm.
deep listening conference. The
Yeah,
first.
yeah. It is a dear memory for me too. And my version of that was maybe this was happening a little bit later. Um, was at some point because Rensselaer Polytechnic is a very, as you said, a very large campus. It's
Mm,
also a very green campus with rolling hills. And from the distance, I saw many people as they were approaching where the conference center was. Clearly, they were part of the conference because they were walking slowly and paying attention to the sounds around them. And I was thinking, oh, these people are, and actually some of them were doing field recording at the time. And so that was the identifier, is that people were out listening to the world around them. And I remember you were one of them. Somehow, maybe we were a little bit closer to each other than the others, and we established a contact that way. That was my version of that event. And it was nice because I have this really strong visual image of people just walking slowly and listening to the world. It was quite beautiful. So tell me a little bit what your relationship was at that time in those early years to Pauline and the deep listening group.
by this year, I had started to know Pauline, to some extent Ion also, through the deep L list, which was very important for me. Um, and I had also been encountering Pauline several times through the Avatar Orchestra Metaverse, where she was becoming a member, a player in this orchestra, telematic orchestra, that I was involved in starting up in 2017. And she joined, I think, the year after 2018. And yeah, so that was part of my relation to deep listening, that I knew Pauline a bit and about the practices through the deep L list. And
That was long before we had places like Facebook and Instagram, and lists were where people of common interests gathered and somehow found each other. And that was the nature of the Deep L list in the early,
mm,
that was the early days of the internet.
yeah, it was in mid 90s and late 90s. And yeah, we you had pen pals on the email lists. So started to know each other. I think I started to know Norman Lowry there, and
Sure.
other deep listeners also that was hanging out there, and it was yeah, it was very important time, and in the around the millennium shift, I was having a big moment together with the deep L list, because my sister's son had catched a cancer in a soft tissue in the hand. Uh, and it was an unusual cancer, and we were all very, very concerned and worried about the outcome of this. He was young, he was 19, 20 by that time, and strong also, but we were very worried, and I remember at some time I get community help from that list, because I reached out for the list and told them about this situation, and someone, I don't remember who, but someone came up with intention of sending healing vibrations, and I remember this day I was sitting up at the hay barn where we lived at that place by that time, and I sort of received this communal humming, and it felt, I could really feel it like something really happening physically in the lives, and so yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and he survived. He had to amputate the thumb, but
Ooh.
yeah, but anyway, he survived, and he managed very fine, and he has a family now with 2 kids, and
Wow.
so that is a very dear memory of the deep listening community by that time. One of many.
That's the first story that I've heard about applying deep listening as sort of as a way to help you through this really difficult time. And there's a lot of conversation about how one aspect of deep listening is that it can help heal you. And so hearing your particular story is quite nice because it actually gives a sense of how impactful it is.
Yeah, now I have get goosebumps when you're saying that. Wow.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
getting goosebumps from your story
Mm,
for sure.
mm.
Um, so, I'm very curious because you're a composer and a sound artist, and I wanted to know a little bit about how deep listening and your investigation into it has influenced your artwork.
I think a lot. I often, even since childhood, I would say I was really often exploring music and sounds on my own, in playing as a child with pianos and objects and things. But it was like a play for me, and I was very often alone in my playing and listening. But after becoming a teacher like 30 years ago, maybe even before, when I started to work as a sound technician, I also started to really strive for doing things together. And of course, I had been playing in bands also before, but it was more striving for get together and do things together, listening together and play together. So I think the deep listening practice has really brought the community into my life as very important contribution to my artwork. I always want to compose for groups and for people.
In this case, like with a telematic orchestra, or like in the case of your work in Second Life, do you compose for that work, or do you actually improvise, or is it a combination? How does that evolve?
Yeah, it's both. We have during rehearsals, it has very often been improvisatory approaches, but from that it has also been coming composed piece, and the composed piece are sort of composed improvisation within frames. So it's very much of a like listening in the moment, and yeah, you can use the word conducting in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote, for instance, one piece called Fragula, and that is composed in the moment, and there's always different choices in it, and I hope that the orchestra is also co-composing the piece as it goes. I mean the way it takes. So it's a sort of structure improvisation.
So, is there like a theme that you work with as a way to direct the composing? Is that your approach?
Yeah, there can be themes. Speaking of that piece, Fragula, it was some wordplay of fragility and fragmentation, and it got to be the sort of divide that sometimes can be felt between with the analog world and the digital world, like the synthetic world and sort of the um, analog world of acoustic instruments. So that piece is consisting of a harmonium,
Mm-hmm.
reed organ, and sine tones, and also other types of tones, square wave tones,
Mm-hmm.
and
Nice.
all, yeah, and sort of a sort of melding of these and walking between those words.
Well, it's a curious idea to compose in that way. So that's why I was very, very curious about how that works, because most people think of composing as something, a musician sits down with maybe a keyboard or something like that and writes out the notes that they choose and they play it over, and it's sort of this kind of mechanical process that slowly evolves into notes on a page,
Hmm.
and then gets transferred to a person who plays it, or an orchestra or something like that. So, as an improvisorial, that's really a bad word to use. It doesn't make. I'm trying to figure out how that would come out as a term, but you get the idea.
I heard the word comprovisation.
Improvisation.
Yes, maybe can fit.
So that's why I was quite curious about how that would work out.
Yeah.
Also, as a teacher, you also teach, and you teach sound and music, and I was interested in hearing about how teaching deep listening works for you, and what is your experience with teaching with your students.
My experience is that the more I have implemented deep listening practices in my ordinary teaching, that it has been so beneficial, because it's really boosts the creativity, and strengthens the community in the classes, and I just noticed that because I've always been working in processes, and it's great for getting rooted in this creative practices when you are grounded and present in the moment, which is not always the case, especially with young people, can really need to get away from the screen and discover new dimensions of
Mm.
exchanges and
Mhm.
creating together. So I don't know if that was a sort of answer on your
Oh, that
question,
was
but
no, that was very, very clear. I was thinking about how much of that work must be in just reining in these wild minds.
excuse me, how to just ring in?
Rein in, meaning,
Yeah, rain. Okay.
yes, rein in I term them as wild minds because I think of my mind when I was at that age,
Mm,
uh, and how it wanders all over the place and is distracted from every momentary experience. And so, especially in this day of monitors and cell phones, if they have their cell phone on, which usually the case in the classroom, they're going to be distracted by that and other students, and it's just a whole um, arena of auditory demands. So my thought was that to get them to focus their concentration only on listening and being in the community is probably a major portion of your activity as a teacher first, as a deep listening teacher.
yes. I notice the more I introduce that at an early stage, the better things goes,
Ah.
and yeah, we are doing some sound walks. I have young music producing students, and sometimes they can be a bit in the screens and hard to reach, and but they really like to go out on sound walks and do listening exercises, and
Mhm.
I call them more exercises in the beginning. Then after a while I can introduce that, I mean, this is a meditation, and
Sure.
we are getting deeper into it, and they are sharing between each other, and uh, they realize that they have a lot of questions that has gone away. They have not been entering their minds before they start to articulate them, and so often I can have, in the end of a study year, I can get some feedbacks that it was amazing that this was happening because it brought new dimensions to their lives, and they
How-
got new ideas about.
Well, it sounds like it gives their brain space to think.
Yeah.
It invites new ideas because their mind is now resting.
So I am so happy that I have started to implement that more and more after my own deep listening eartification in 2015. So it's coming more and more.
Yeah, yeah. It's great to hear these in the field experiences about how it creates an environment for investigation and also how it strengthens the community. And actually, you had mentioned that it strengthens the community, but I was kind of wondering if you have some examples of your in-classroom experience of how that has evolved.
Yeah, I can take then some examples from another situation, because I also teach sound art class, and they are coming from all over Sweden. They are not just here regional, so it's a distance course, but we have like monthly meetups in the school,
Mm-hmm.
and but every week we have also um, we are connecting together in a Zoom class, and these Zoom classes, and that was coming extra much, very much during the pandemic, because it was so hard to meet in real then. So since then, it has always been that we are starting with some movement exercises from Heloise Gold's
Mm-hmm.
collections, and also continuing with listening meditations, and sometimes that is taking up whole the 2 hour um, lesson,
Mm-hmm.
and this has been very important for some of the students to get the feeling of connection, and to keep up the creative artistic works, um, between those times where we cannot meet together in the space. But it has been very supportive, and I think also some of this experience of implementing deep listening in that course has also led to a stronger community, and the students themselves are organizing their own sound
Oh,
art events, and I mean, just this year I think we are up to there have been two extra events that didn't was in the curriculum, but just popping up, and just because of the community
nice, nice.
between the students.
And some people don't know what sound art is. So can you tell us about a little bit what is involved in?
Yeah, sometimes I don't know even myself what sound art is,
I
because
know it can be so incredibly broad, right?
yeah, it can be so much, and for me, it's anyway, it's to working creatively with the material of sound, to involve sound in your art creations, and
Yeah.
that can be time based. That can be like sound pieces. It can be sound installations
Mm-hmm.
for a gallery or museum or
Right.
exhibition space, and it can be sound performance, like doing choreographic sound performance, and it can even be like a visual art also, where you are working with the shapes of sound, or
Mm-hmm.
informed and inspired by the sonics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's also very thin line sometimes between experimental music and
Yeah.
yeah, sound art. Often
But
it's not either nor, it's both.
right, right. It distances itself from music in the sense that the focus is not on composing and creating a coherent organization of sound.
Yes.
Well, it is a coherent organization of sound, but not in the way that music is.
Yeah. Yes. and
That's
and
even
it's
vaguer, right?
yeah, and it's very free from the historical traditions of notation, and I
Right.
mean, you have the graphic scores, and you have text scores,
Sure.
which Pauline was a master of creating text scores, and
Well, at that time, it was in its nascence.
mm, yeah, it was a Fluxus movement with a lot of artists composing. I mean, Yoko Ono, for just one example, with text pieces of her.
That's right. I hadn't thought about the fact that it was developed during the Fluxus movement. Sure, that makes so much sense.
And even it goes back even further, because John Cage, which also was part of the Fluxus movement, he was very inspired by Marcel Duchamp,
Sure.
and what is that piece called that Marcel was writing? Sculpture musicale. I'm not good in French, but sculpture musicale, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember exactly, but it's a text-based art piece which says something in some short sentence. Go out in a crossing in the street and listen to the sound sculpture
Hmm.
in the moment. That is a sound sculpture of Marcel Duchamp, and that is very old. I think it's more than 100 years old.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was his era. I know Duchamp pretty well. I know his work well, but I didn't know about that particular text piece.
And John Cage was very inspired by Marcel Duchamp, and he even tried to learn to play chess to approach Marcel Duchamp, and finally he got to meet him also, and they had some chess plays, and they did some art performance about it also.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
no, so I think to playing with the format, how to create and shape sound is very inspiring when you are not just limiting yourself to the traditional note system, and there's many more dimensions. And even in the notated music, there is always so much more possibilities to realize the pieces, of course, but maybe not always in the intention of the composer then, but that's maybe another story.
Well, I love the fact that sound art, which is an area that I'm deeply invested in, is an opportunity for all people to engage in sound, because it does not limit you to knowing the rituals of structuring music, of being educated in a musical environment with an instrument, with knowledge and training as a child, for example, which a lot of children have had growing up. You know, they have parents who want them to be masters at whatever instrument is their favorite instrument. So for those people that were not influenced by that kind of environment or influenced by a home that had music, it's a place for them to engaging in sound without the pressures of having to start at age 3.
Yeah.
And you can just, you know, at any time in your life, you can just start and open your ears and pay attention.
Yeah, that reminds me of my own first encounters with musical instruments and playing, because we had a piano in the living room when I grew up, but I have two older sisters, and they went to school when I was still at home with my mother, who was housewife
Mm-hmm.
and taking care of me. But it was very boring in this neighborhood because there were not many other kids in my age.
Mm-hmm.
I think none at the moment. So I was really alone there on that street and neighborhood. So I played a lot with things I could play at home with, and then there was this piano because my sisters were taking musical lessons, and they were having exercises to play the scales, and
Sure.
they came home and cried because it was so complicated and they didn't like it, and the teacher was so cruel and
Yeah.
demanding. But I was there in daytimes and I saw this magical piano there standing, and it was a big, wonderful, what you say? I like the word for like a play tool, something to play with.
A
I
toy.
said, yeah, it was a toy for me, a big toy. So I could just explore all the black
Yeah.
keys or all the white keys and do things and open the lid and
Oh,
putting pens and things and play with that
oh my.
and so I started to explore it as a toy, the
It caged
piano.
you in at birth.
Yeah. And then it was a bit the same with the radio that was in the kitchen. I could just tune
Oh,
between different stations and just interesting by the sounds that came out from this machine.
wow.
So it always has been very playful for me, making sounds and playing music.
That's wonderful because you can carry those ideas and that inspiration forward in your teaching environment too as you pass it along to your students. It show them that you don't have to be a dictator to pass on music,
Mm,
as in the olden days, uh,
yes.
but that it can be fun and a way to actually learn creativity, which is something that was always lacking in education of that style, because the assumption is what you had to learn the basic environment before you could become you could compose, and that always had everything had a structure. But if you step away from that and allow people just to play, then they find their own structures.
Mm, agree.
And that's, I guess, why I like sound art, because it's non-hierarchical.
Yes. And I think it was a very free area for me also to start. I at this school that I'm still working at, I started with to teach in a course radio production, which I love very much radio, and I'm still involved in some radio production. And but through that radio course, we started to also have some moments in that course that was dedicated to experimental radio. So there came sound art to to me more, and we started to do experimental radio programs and air them, and so from there the idea to start a dedicated sound art course came.
Well, it's the first that I've ever heard of, to tell you the truth, a dedicated
Mm.
art course.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's not so usual. We have some in Sweden that are at university level, and
Mhm.
but there are not so many. I can.
Oh, no. Yeah, I'm trying to reach back to see if I remember any other examples. Maybe in the 80s and early 90s, there might have been. There was a lot of conversation about sound art then. But I think it's lost its foothold in the music world and in the institutional world,
Mm,
with the new interests in direction and with music, at least here in the United States.
mm,
It's very consumer directed.
yeah, but there are some great stations in US. Like what is it? WFMU is one
Mm-hmm.
of them, I think, and NKPFA.
KPFA, yeah,
Yes.
that's from my hometown,
Ah, okay. KPFA is in
Berkeley,
Berkeley. Yes, yes, that's true.
the land of experimentation.
Yeah.
Well, I'm fascinated by people who delve into this realm of experimentation on this level. This is like the most the most essential level where you're just finding the basic components and learning where it will direct you, learning from what you hear to find something to form out of it. And as I talk to other people about their approach to experimentation, whether it's art or music, I find it's really interesting because it's not an area that is well explored in the academic realm. And yet it's a term that everybody knows. Everybody knows what experimentation means, whether you're talking about engineering or any other enterprise. Experimentation is something that is part of human activity. So to have more people talk about their approach to experimentation, I think is really valuable, so that other people can understand that it provides an access to a wealth of knowledge.
Mm.
Oh, and personal development.
Yeah, yeah. And it brings me to remember also my sort of trajectory in my career, because I started to work as an electronic engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I took that education so I could step into that industry to work with electronic circuitry design.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I sort of liked that, to build electronic circuits and see things happening, uh, lights lighting up, and microprocessors starting to work, small programs.
Getting the
Uh,
hello world
yes,
message.
just that kind of thing. And in the beginning of the 80s, it was like a electronic boom. I mean, it
Mm.
also was in US, the Silicon Valley, but it also came to Stockholm. We had our small Silicon Valley, and it was interesting. Everything was possible. You could build anything, and there were lots of works all over. So I worked there for around 6 years or something, but I noticed that I didn't like to really work with those people who were there programming and
Mm-hmm.
were there for the maybe business side of it. I was sort of having my dreams somewhere else, to work with music and recording, sound engineering. So
Mm-hmm.
I was taking, in the evening, I was going to different courses and learning about sound engineering. And then in the end of the 80s, 1988, I just found my eyes on a small job ad about sound engineer was searched for the Royal College of Music in Stockholm. And I immediately, it was something vibrating about that ad, so I had to send in my application. And I got that work, and it was amazing. I mean, that shaped also my life, continuous life, because I got to meet so wonderful musicians, composers, and other colleagues, teachers, and exposed to a multitude of music, from symphonic music and electronic music, jazz, pop, rock, everything. So I stopped played myself for 2 years. The first 2 years I was sitting there and recording each day from Monday to Friday, often in the evenings also. And it was like an avalanche of music just coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Nice.
yeah, it was very nice, but I couldn't have an own creative output at that time. It was just taking in and learning to mix and do things.
Mm-hmm.
So, but after 2 years, I came out from that period and started to create again and also using the facilities that were there.
Mhm.
But it was really a great time that I learned a lot. It was my I didn't go to a music conservatory or something like that. So but it was my way of learning about
Yeah,
music broadly.
nice. Well, Bjorn, I want to have a longer conversation with
Mm.
you, but as it turns out, we're coming to the end of our time together. So I wanted to take a few minutes just for you to tell us a little bit about your activities in the summertime. I think you have a number of activities you're involved with.
Mm. Yes, thank you. Mm. Yeah, usually in the summers, I am arranging some deep listening immersions in Sweden, in
Hmm.
this area that I live. And I've been doing it with Jennifer Wilsey and Sharon Stewart. And now this summer, we will arrange one deep listening immersion in July 21 to July 24. And that is together with Christine Nordervall, that I
Mm.
met first in no, I met her in 2013, but I didn't speak so much with her then. But I met her again in 2015 in Norway, where I
Mm.
attended the deep listening retreat that Iona and Pauline and Heloise was arranging in northern Norway, because Christine and some other people were arranging that one. And we had been speaking of doing it in Sweden at some time, but then it happened in northern Norway. So I'm happy now to offer this with Christine Nordervall and also with the help of another deep listener certificate that is called Patrick Dallard.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you know about him. No. He lives in Sweden. He's from France. But so we three will facilitate that together in an old school that we have created an association with artists and not only artists. We are many different. Some are cooking, some are maybe doing bookkeeping. And some are researchers. A very nice bunch of people working together in that association to fill that old schoolhouse with different activities. And my interest has been from the start to be able to give deep listening workshops and other sound art workshops also.
Nice. Nice. Well, I know we've spoken in the past about these workshops that you've had, and so I wanted to learn a little bit more deeply about them, and they sound great. And I'm hoping one of these days I'll be able to travel and
Yeah,
participate in one. It would be wonderful,
yeah. Welcome.
especially a sound art workshop.
Yeah, and also I can mention that my school, I think it's now on the 6th or 7th year. We have a sound art residency at my school. So artists can apply, and if they are selected, they can come here for 1 month in the autumn and work with their art. And they have access to a studio and also all the neighborhoods and some equipment. And I'm there as a contact person to that residency artist also.
Oh,
To
that's really wonderful to hear about.
Yeah, it's called Airy ljudkonst, Airy sound art.
Super. Well, Bjorn, thank you so much for your time. I'm excited to hear all of your stories, and I'm looking forward to our future conversations as our relationship evolves.
Mm, the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, Bjorn.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Listening with China Blue. I hope it inspires you to build your own listening practice. This begins as a daily practice of attentively listening without judgment. And ask yourself, what is your version of silence? If you want to learn more about me and my work, go to chinablueart.com and please follow me on Facebook and at Instagram. Thank you.